Welcome to the Derek Loudermilk Show. This is episode 398 with Karl Gruber. Karl Gruber is a friend of mine and fellow member of the Ethereal Podcast Network, and he hosts the World Awakenings podcast. He's a law of attraction life coach and the author of a couple books, including True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction. And I realized I've never had anyone on the show talking specifically about the law of attraction. So that's what today's episode is about. Lots of great stories about fun things that happen when you start to use the law of attraction and how to apply it to your own life more seamlessly. We'll also talk about A Course in Miracles, which Karl has been studying for many years, and other channeled material. Karl also hosts a podcast with a bunch of channeled material, people that channel higher dimensional beings. And you'll also hear how Karl became just the 9th man to run 52 marathons in 52 weeks. Without further ado, here is Karl Gruber. Karl Gruber, welcome to the show.
Hey, welcome, Derek. I love that. Bam, right into it. Thank you, man.
Yeah, good to see you. So let's talk about something we have in common. We have a lot of things in common. Running. I was a collegiate runner. You were a marathoner. I'm super curious about this 52 marathons in 52 weeks. Yeah, what would you like to tell me about that process? Like, how did it get started, first of all?
Well, I'll tell you only if you tell me where you ran collegiately first.
I ran at McAllister, which is up in St. Paul.
Yeah, I have a good friend that graduated from there. Yeah, up in St. Paul. That must be fun running in the heart of winter. But anyway, yeah, my 52 marathons in 52 weeks. Yeah, it was quite a while ago. I became the 9th man in the world to run one marathon a week, 26.2 miles or 42.2 kilometers once a week for 52 weeks. I started May 5th, 1996 and finished in April 27th, 1997 at the Big Sur International Marathon in California. And I had been just a casual runner for a while. I had run 9 marathons up to that point, but I was a wild and crazy disc jockey, single guy back then at that time, and I ran on a daily basis, healthy as a hoss, and just loved running. Well, I met a little boy through the Leukemia Society of America, Glenn Miller Jr. of Logan, Ohio, who had leukemia, and within a year he was dead from leukemia. There was no cure for cancer, for leukemia back then. It is a form of blood cancer. And I had been in a point where, as my spiritual awakening and seeking and knowing and understanding about the universe and the things around me, was what I call a positive possibility power thinker. And I decided to, well, what can I do to help the world? And I was out on a morning run in the beautiful countryside. I used to own a home down way out in the countryside in southeast Ohio. I'd run on rural dirt roads every morning. And I got this idea, I'll run a marathon a week for 52 straight weeks. I didn't even know that was possible. I had never heard about it. I later on found out that Jay Hilgerson of California became the first man in the world to ever do it in 1980. He was from California. And I decided to do that, to use my marathons once a week for a year as a vehicle to raise money and awareness for leukemia. So I traveled around America, North America, Canada, Hawaii, ran the marathons, and raised lots of money and awareness for leukemia research. And since I completed it in 1997, dozens and dozens and dozens of runners have completed and gone far beyond. I mean, there's been people who ran a marathon a day for 365 days in a row, more than one. But yeah, it was a unique experience for me.
Why leukemia? Was there some connection there for you?
Well, that was the little boy, Glenn Miller, who died. I didn't have any connection to it until then. The Leukemia Society of America back in the 90s had a group called Team in Training, in which they trained healthy people to go run a marathon, a specific marathon, usually in an exotic location. And during the training, raise money for leukemia research, which was given to the Leukemia Society. And I was training in '94. I was training for the Honolulu Marathon, and I had never been to Hawaii, and I was all excited about it. And so that was a motivation there. And like I said, I at that point in my life, I had been studying. I started with the basics. I started reading Dr. Norman Vincent Peale's book, The Power of Positive Thinking. That was the very first thing that took me to a place that I'd never visited before. That there was something else besides what the crap I saw in the world in front of me. And then I went on to other authors like Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra, and on and on and on. And so I had this motivation to do something big, but to be of help to the world and service of the world. And that was my connection. And that's how I connected with the leukemia cause.
Gotcha. Okay. And so logistics, I'm as an adventurer, I know that like simply getting from marathon to marathon each week is probably a big pain. Like you have to plan in advance, you have to register for them, you have to like secure transport. What was just the like day-to-day process? Were you running in between marathons? Like what was the whole picture like?
Yeah, that is a big question, and I'm glad you asked, because and many times I've been asked this question, but to get started, I mean, my goal was to raise as much money as possible on awareness for leukemia. So I sought out big sports companies to sponsor me. Well, pretty much, and this is just when the internet was really starting, or in '96. I actually started working on it in '95. So really, most of it was faxing and phone calls and letters. And so that's how I did it. And I asked the marathon race directors or committees to try to help me out, comp me an entry, give me a place to stay, comp me a place to stay if possible, and always to give me a marathon number, a bib race number 52. And pretty much I got a few sponsorships. Power Bar sponsored me. So whenever I did a television or newspaper or radio or internet interview, as long as their logo was seen or heard or mentioned, I got paid a little bit. Kroger, the grocery store chain, sponsored me, gave me $5 for every mile I ran for the year. And that money all went to the Leukemia Society. And so the logistics, yeah, it was amazing, because I had to rent out my beautiful home I used to own down in Hideaway Hills in southeastern Ohio, send my golden retriever to live with my parents, locked up the door, took off in my Chevrolet Blazer SUV I had at the time. I drove 65,000 miles by myself and flew 60,000 miles, going from one side of the country to the other, to Canada. And I didn't drive to Hawaii. I was smart to do that. And went over there, and it was an amazing logistical year. Yeah, somehow I did it, and that's because I had the faith. I knew I could do it, and I had trained my body to handle it too.
And was there any point in the races where your body started to break down, or you thought you might not be able to finish, or anything like that? Or
well, I can tell you're a runner. Great question too. Well, when you're running 26.2 miles a week for 52 straight weeks, injuries could always flare its head. But I started repeating a mantra, which I still do to this day, and I repeated it while I was running this morning. Injury and illness are not an option. Injury and illness are not an option. And as you stay on that thought and send the energy out to the universe sent more back to me to stay healthy. I had my aches and pains and bumps and bruises that you would expect over the years, and exhaustion. I would run a marathon. I'm one of those types of runners. I come across the finish line. I usually give it all my all, and invariably somebody says, "Are you all right?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right." And then 5 or 6 days later, I'm ready to run another marathon. I don't do marathons. I'm kind of retired from it now, but so yeah, I did that. And at first, I'd say about the first 12 to 15 weeks, I ran a little bit in because I was so busy traveling. I ran maybe 15 miles a week in between that. And finally, I realized that I needed that recuperation period. So I ended up running once a week for 26.2 miles.
Oh, wow. So you would just not train at all, just like race in the weekends, basically.
I wouldn't go so far to say that I wasn't trained. I mean, I spent an entire year prior to then running at least 120-mile run per weekend to teach my body how to handle that. But I was also blessed with a pretty strong body and a pretty amazing recuperative powers. Usually took me about at least 3 days to recuperate from running 26.2 miles. And then, hey, let's go again. I get out there and I'm not fast. I have a friend, Chuck Engel, who is one of the most amazing runners in the world. He's 50 years old now, and he's run 450 marathons, and he's the only man in the world to have won a marathon in every state, all 50 states twice.
Whoa.
And he also ran 52 marathons in 52 weeks I don't know, about 13 or 15 years ago. And he's fast. He's still fast. But me, I was a 4 to 4:15, 4 hour to 4 hours and 15-minute marathoner for most of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's such an interesting that you had that mantra. Only recently, like last year, did I sort of knew that you could sort of will yourself to be healthy, but I had never had the chance to need to do it really. I kind of like when I got sick, I was like, oh, well, I'll just, rest for a little bit. And sometimes I think I'm like happy to have a bit of a break. But I was going to visit my grandparents and I couldn't be sick and I was starting to get sick. And I was like, like I'm not going to be able to see them if I am sick. So I went to bed and I was like, I'm going to, I set the most solid intention that I've ever set. Like, I'm going to be healthy when I wake up, and boom, it worked. And I was like, oh my gosh. So then, actually, you and I were just chatting. The trip I took to Bulgaria, I was starting to get sick. Like right as the plane was taking off, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm coming down with something because I had just done like 2 full days of travel leading up to that trip. And usually, plane travel is not the best for like staying healthy. But I did the same thing. I was like, nope, it's not an option. I'm commanding my body to be well. And like over the course of the flight, to Europe, the 10-hour flight, I got better and better. And I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff is it works. I can't believe it, how well it works.
And that leads me to and I know you're fully aware of this, the power of our intention. Intention is everything. As a matter of fact, I am the facilitator of a Facebook page called the Power of Eight Healing Group. And it's based on author, researcher Lynn McTaggart's book, The Power of Eight, where she discovered when 8 or more people come together, either virtually or live. She's done thousands and thousands of these sessions and focus healing intentions on a person, place, or thing. She has witnessed miracles of healing. And my group on Facebook now has 1,100 members from around the world. You've been on one or two of those healing sessions, as a matter of fact. So the power of our intention, knowing what incredible, powerful creators we are as the divine being we are, it works. And you just direct your intention and your thoughts with complete faith and trust that it's already done and it works.
Yeah, when I first read her book and her research several years ago now, that was one of those like, oh my gosh, this is the ticket. these days I'm not blown away by so many things, but like that was one of the real like aha moments for me. And yeah, I'm actually curious, like in that group, if you've seen like what are the most dramatic stories that you've experienced from doing those Power of Eight groups?
Well, and two, we've had some healings. It's interesting. Many of the people that we do healing sessions, there's so many people. I don't see a lot of feedback. Although there we had my friend Addie, who lives in the Netherlands, and she's a regular. She had cancer lesion on her hand, and we did a healing session for it. I mean, she still went to the doctor to do stuff with it, but it's gone. It's gone. Other things like that. Gosh, just initially, it seems to be most of the people report gradual healings, and many of the people. A friend of ours, David, who lives in California, I think he had a cancerous tumor somewhere, and he's a Course in Miracles student, which is the modern spiritual non-dualistic guide. He did the surgery, and after we've done a session for him, he is completely healed back, healthy and whole. But the beautiful thing about our intention, especially in a healing situation, is those who focus their intention to heal somebody else or a person, place, or thing, there's a rebound effect. And Lynn McTaggart especially has many stories on this rebound effect, and I've noticed it in myself, that the rebound, that which you send out to heal somebody else, comes back to you in some way, shape, or form. And for me, it's been an incredible sense of peace since I have been the facilitator of this group. It's healed me in my mind, in my heart, in being very peaceful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I was gonna ask, what keeps you going facilitating those groups? Is it kind of what you just mentioned?
Well, yeah. I mean, as a matter of fact, we get so many requests for healing sessions. I'm of the opinion the whole world needs healing, and that's for sure in our chaotic 3D world of craziness. What keeps me going? Well, it's the same reason I started the group. I've been a spiritual seeker of wanting to know and understand there's something better than this out there. And I got to a place a couple years ago where I had a download from Spirit. Said, I had read her books, and, well, why don't you start a Facebook group, Power of Eight Healing Group? I go, okay. I mean, it just was this feeling. I knew I should do this. And as I continue to do it, now I have a co-administrator, Eleni Yamblis, one of our colleagues, who helps me with it. And it's just the satisfaction of being in a group situation where all people are of like-mindedness, and at the end of every one, I just go, wow, that was powerful.
Have you shared your group with Lynn, or have you talked to her, had her on your show?
I've tried to get Lynn on my show a number of times, and she's really busy. Haven't got her on my show. And she knows, there's actually probably a couple thousand Power of Eight healing groups throughout the world. If you go to her, I think it's just lynnmctaggart.com. She has a Power of Eight community page where you can go there and see all of the Power of Eight groups all around the world. So it's not just me, and I'm sure if she did find out about my group, she would not be surprised.
I have a friend. It reminds me of he started the Tony Robbins fan page Facebook group. It ended up being like 150,000 people. Wow. that joined. All of a sudden, he had like the biggest Facebook group, for Tony Robbins, and I guess he got to go and hang out with Tony and be a VIP at one of the events or something. Yeah. So just curious about that. Have you? I can't remember if you've been to one of our. I call it the Unified Field Manifestation. It's basically taking the idea of the Power of Eight and applying it to something besides healing. So because I run this mastermind for entrepreneurs, I was like, oh, these people, they have these intentions. They want to do a new launch for their course, or they want to find a business partner, or amazing clients, or whatever it is. And so we started applying the same group intention for a specific life outcome. And we've had like almost 100% success rate. It's really phenomenal how to see it work. And sometimes it's really slow, like 2 years before the person actually experiences the result. But sometimes it's like instantaneous, like the later that day, they're like, oh, my life has changed already. Like, thanks so much. So yeah, it's really cool. And I was originally trying to harness the rebound effect, because I thought, okay, if we can all do this together, then we're all gonna benefit in our own businesses. One of the things that I think is a big advantage is, if there's like 8 of us, then we'll all kind of share, like, here's my intention for today, here's my intention for today. Whichever one feels the most alive for that particular day, like what we all decide together where we want to focus. There's one receiver, but we're all kind of saying like, yeah, we want this thing to happen the most. And I think that really helps too, because it like lets people get behind powering their intention into something.
I think this makes complete sense to me because, I mean, if there is such great power, and there is great creative healing power in intention, that you could apply it to any topic. I know there's an offshoot group from my Power of 8 healing group for abundance, and I haven't attended one of their sessions yet, but it seems to me, what I see from their messages, there's a lot of success there already. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really can apply intention to anything that you want to focus on for healing or building or success. And when you have more than one person knowing everything is energy, you become in a unified field of intention for the same result, and it works. It absolutely works.
Yeah, and it perhaps there's like not a cumulative effect, but like an exponential effect. I think like when you start adding more people, it seems to be more than just like a linear relationship between how likely it is to happen.
And
Go ahead.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but there seems to be a hunger by more and more and more and more individuals in the world for things like this now, because despite advances in understanding of quantum physics and what our true reality is, and spirituality and everything else, the world is still stuck in a daily global chaos of 3D madness. And now that's why people are turning more and more to this type of thing, because they are seeking something that will bring them healing and health and intention and abundance and love and peace. And it is, I really sense that there's such a hunger for this type of thing.
Maybe you can give me your take on this, because I find it hard to get a good pulse for like the general world. Probably listeners of my show and myself, like we see a lot of people awakening, or the guests that I have bring these aha moments, like, oh my gosh, it's so cool what you've discovered or channeled or created. So in my perception, I feel like I'm surrounded by all these amazing things happening. It's like, oh my gosh, what an exciting time to be alive. But I don't really know like the general, I guess, the people that I'm not in contact with, right? The people in the neighborhood that I've never gone to, what their experience of life is right now. Do you have a sense for like, yeah, is everybody waking up, or is it only like the people we know, or what's going on?
Let's just put it this way, like I kind of stated, more and more and more and more people are waking up, but there still is and always will be a certain segment of the world that has no clue on this stuff. My friend James Goy Jr., who's been a guest on my show, he's a metaphysician, written interesting books on the law of attraction. He actually has one called How to Attract Money Using Mind Power, and it's legitimate stuff. But James says that when he mentions metaphysical or spiritual topics to the casual person he may like maybe in a grocery store, their eyes just glaze over. They have no clue. And so there is still this segment of the world that's stuck in the darkness and can't see anything beyond the chaos and the separation in front of their eyes. But just like my main mission question of my own podcast in World Awakenings, my show, I ask literally every guest, why now, more than ever, are the people of the world awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening? Now, I think a lot of it has to do with technology. Zoom has only been super duper popular in the last 3 years. Before that, there's still Skype and many other avenues of that. But the connectivity at lightning speed with people around the world is now more prevalent than ever. And so shows like yours and mine and getting together and our colleagues now, I'm like you, I have colleagues who are on the same page with me spiritually and enlightenment and wanting that hunger of understanding from around the world, from Norway to Australia to England to Canada, to on and on and on, all around. But I do find it interesting. In my personal circle here in my town that I live in, almost none of my personal friends are into what I do. And so, I'm so used to on a daily basis going out and just, hey man, did you see the Cavaliers score last night in the game last night? And I'm a big sports fan. I like talking about it, but you really, if you go into that realm, into these deeper topics, most people know. Yeah, but I did see that the king got crowned the other day, that type of thing. And so, yeah, you have to, if you're caught in a inner circle where people don't understand what you're seeking to understand, you just can't. You've got to go beyond that and know that now we have the opportunity to talk to somebody, in China on the internet and hopefully expand our knowledge and connection and help with that awakening and that enlightenment.
So could you perhaps give like an overview? And let me tell you where this question is coming from. I last year wrote this sort of bullet pointed letter, like here's 10 things I've learned from these hundreds of metaphysical interviews that I've done about like the mechanics of the universe, about extraterrestrials, about the dimensions, about, the basic laws of the universe that you should just know. Just here's your like little bullet point guide. If you find it helpful, and maybe it'll help you understand what's going on in the world in terms of like, why are we seeing such craziness, etc. If you were to do the same thing, if you were to say like, here's what I've learned, here's some of the important realizations that I've come to understand, could you mention some of those?
Well, I think for me, the biggest thing as I've expanded my understanding of the universe in true reality, it starts with my my study of A Course in Miracles, the Modern Spiritual Guide, okay, which is was published in around 1975 or 76, and it is a true non-dualistic spiritual teaching that this life that we live within this body is an illusion of our separation from the Creator, and that we have fallen into this dream that we are in a body, and I'm separate from Derek, and I'm separate from the guy outside the window of my place here or whatever, and everybody's separate. I'm driving down the road, and I've come to understand that my true reality is at home as a divine being, my true self, with the Creator and all that is. And what that has done is that realization has allowed me to grab onto the power that I have. Well, I want to create this. I want to do this. I mean, not necessarily easy. I mean, the world throws roadblocks and things in front of us, but it's like running my marathons once a week for 52 weeks. I understood that I could achieve the impossible. So if you have a dream of having a dream home in Tahiti or something like that, don't think it's impossible. I have found working with my clients as a life coach is that almost universally, every one of my clients has some sense of lack of self-worth. Oh, I dream of doing this, but no one in my family has ever done it. Why will I do it? Most people won't allow their minds to go to that place of their highest dreams and goals because they're afraid of failure and they don't understand or remember their own inherent power to accomplish anything.
Most people won't allow themselves to even think about their biggest dreams. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely, because they just don't think it's, quote, real, and literally we have the power to create anything we really, really want to. And as you well know, I mean, let's say you have a big goal of accomplishing one of your ultimate dreams. The universe, as you work in harmony and alignment with the universe and the law of attraction, allowing it to be delivered to you, many times your ultimate dream will come to you in a way that you hadn't even thought of or realized. I think, what's his name? John Assaraf, who was in the movie. He's a pretty big inspirational spiritual leader. He was in the movie The Secret. And he even talks about this in the movie The Secret, that he had created a vision board many, many, many years earlier, and he put down a picture of his dream house and everything, and he had but as the ensuing years went by, he put his vision board away, and one day he moved in a new house, and a couple months later he was unpacking boxes, and he pulled out his vision board and and he looked at the vision board. And the house he was living in had just moved in. He had it on his vision board years and years ago, but it came to him in a different time frame, in a different way. He realized that he had manifested his dream home, and I love that story. You can't force the universe's hand to well, this is how I want my greatest dream to be delivered to. You have to put it out there, detach from it, and trust and have faith that it will be delivered to you.
I think I've had the exact same experience, by the way, of like, it was the very first sort of personal development exercise that I did was where you just write down your perfect day, sort of hour by hour, what you're doing. And then several years later, I realized like I had hit the exact schedule, exact location, exact sort of like who I was spending my time with. I was like, oh my gosh, it works. But it took 4 or 5 or 6 years. I don't know exactly how many, but it wasn't super fast. It wasn't like I could really, I actually want this now, and it showed up 6 years later. So do you have anything for people that like want it to come like expediently?
Well, and too, I love your example there, because I hadn't thought of it in a longer range in that particular way, because what you did is a law of attraction process called scripting, where you sit down and write out exactly how you want things to unfold. Again, you're not forcing the universe's hand, but you're putting it out there to the universe. Well, here it is. And this is why I tell people, only you are the writer, producer, and director of your own life. So if you're this movie director, write out the script. And I've used this many times with many of my clients, is let's say you have a big business meeting coming up the next day, and you're worried, you're anxious about it and everything. Write out how you want it to go. Here I am, boy, my presentation, I was stood in front of the board and I presented this, my program here, and it was really well received and they all applauded. It was just awesome. And when it was all over, I got my back patted, and then I got the board voted unanimously to give me the money for my budget to create this program. So literally, you are the movie director of your life, and write it out. And you can do this is an expedient way to do that. You can do this for anything. The day of work. So let's say you go to work and you have a coworker who you don't get along with very well, and you write down, and today I went to work and wow, I couldn't believe it. Margaret really just, she and I usually bump heads throughout the day, and today she was just like, hey, how are you doing today? You look really nice today and everything, and on and on and on. And again, it may not unfold exactly like your script, but I have done this a few times, and it is amazing how closely the results can come to what you wrote out.
Do you have an example that you've done that you were really pleased with the results?
Yeah, I've done it. I mean, a real example. I mean, this is, I'm a wild and crazy bachelor. So I remember I had a really cute female friend of mine coming over to visit. And I wrote out how I would like the day and the night to go. And yeah, and it really did. It was one of when I first got certified as a law of attraction life coach, and it really panned out the way I want. It was a beautiful visit with a beautiful lady, and it was just, I mean, that's just a real innocuous type of thing, but you can use it in that way.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. You mentioned something, a word that I hear quite a lot of, like operating in alignment. When you're working in alignment, with the divine or with your higher purpose or whatever. Could you talk more about like how you're in alignment, or exactly that concept, so people can
and what I'm doing right now is I'm flipping through my book here, True Spirituality and a Law of Attraction, because I have a really nice quote from Lynn McTaggart I would like to read to you if I could only find it. And basically what it is when you're in alignment, everything is energy, which means everything's in a frequency. We see the sine wave of energy that goes in a peak and a valley, peak and a valley. And things that are of the same frequency start vibrating in sequence with each other. I'm just not seeing it right here, but basically, to paraphrase what Lynn says, is when the tuning fork is hit, other tuning forks start vibrating in the same frequency. And this really does show us that everything is energy. And that is what alignment is. You start vibrating in exact alignment with, let's say you want a new Corvette. and you have to put that out there, and your alignment has to be in alignment with the vibration of what you want. In this case, a car, and vibrate with it. So yeah, the alignment is a real key.
Okay, so I'm imagining, okay, we could use the Corvette as an example. So you're like a tuning fork, the Corvette's like a tuning fork. You want to harmonize with the Corvette. How can you tell if you're on that right frequency or aligned with the Corvette before you've got the Corvette?
Well, and let's go back to repetition. I think repetition helps. So let's say you're vibrating here and the Corvette is vibrating here. Everything's energy, right? So, and if you continually move your mind and your visualizations to that bright red Corvette that you want, then you go to the showroom of the local Chevrolet dealer, and you walk in, you talk to the salesman, and you sit in the car. And as you do that, excuse me, you're putting yourself in more and more alignment, frequency, vibrationally with what it is, what you desire. And so as the universe works, like attracts like. This is the exact definition of the law of attraction. Like attracts like, that which you think and dwell upon, more will be sent to you. And again, I don't know if we can apply a time frame here, but is if you take the time to literally just see it in your mind and you're vibrating and you go sit in one, and I can tell you when this happens, you're driving around down the road where before your desire for a new Corvette came about, you may not even notice them on the road. All of a sudden you say, oh wait, there's one. There's one over there. Oh, there's another Corvette. Why does he? Oh, wow. And you start to put yourself in alignment with that, and more must be sent to you. And eventually, there's your new car.
So, cars and physical things, like sometimes we just want them because we want them, but they're not always like useful or of service to the rest of humanity. It's just like, that's what we want. So is it, my understanding is that it would be easier to, right? Like you started this Facebook group to heal other people and it grew really fast, amazing success, but it's totally of service. And then now we're talking about like, here's just like a bright, shiny thing that I want. How do we, because it's more like a selfish thing. Like, does it still work just as well when you're trying to just get a toy for yourself?
Well, it's not as selfish as you think, because you never know. I mean, there may be a possibility that when you do attain this, in this case, a particular, a bright red Corvette, that in somehow, way, shape, or form, it may end up serving other people, other family members in your family. You may, I remember a guy who bought a Lamborghini Countach, and he ended up donating it to a charity organization so that they could use to either auction off, or they put their logo on the side and drove around to promote it because it was so visually, people spotted it immediately. So that's not necessary. And there's nothing wrong with desiring something that you want, maybe in this case, a car, as long as it's not for ill effects. Believe me, if you're misaligned, if you're saying I'm going to have a Corvette and I'm going to show my neighbor how cool I am, that doesn't work, because you may get that car, but eventually there's going to be some misalignment with the neighbor and other things like that. So sure, of course, having a goal and attainment in where you're in service to a group or a place or the world, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't discount those things. If you are right mind in what you want to attain, and right mindedness means that you have no ill cause or thoughts, the long range achievement of it is probably more than beneficial in many, many ways.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't considered. Like a car, if you want a car, it could be beneficial for other people. For sure. Yeah. Okay. Do you have you played around with this? Have you like tried to manifest anything more as like a game just to see what you could do?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm trying to think of some things. I'd say, well, I'm going to go back to when I was a student in my 1 year long certification course to become a law of attraction life coach. We used to have pod groups of on the phone back then. I mean, the Zoom wasn't really happening. We would meet on the phone, and there was 3 of us in my little group. And there is a process, a law of attraction process, where it's called, I think, the wallet process. If you keep $100 bill in your wallet at all times, it gives you an abundance mentality that, I can afford this. I got $100 in my wallet. So the 3 of us realized, well, none of the 3 of us have $100 bill in our wallet. And we said, okay, by the time we met once a week, I said, next week at this time, I want to come together. All of the 3 of us intend to have $100 bill in our wallet when we come back. So the next day, I put out that intention before I went to bed. And the next day I get up almost every morning have my coffee, feed the cat, and go out for a run. And in this case, I was living in a beautiful apartment in downtown, where in the city I live in, and the front door of my apartment opened up to a hallway. When then I went outside, had my running gear on, opened the door. It's like 7:30 in the morning, and on the carpet in the hallway, I see like it looked like a brown leaf at first. And I go, oh gosh, well, look at that. And I walked up and it was a $50 bill laying on the ground. Literally, the universe had like threw it in front of my apartment, you know? And I go, okay, thank you, universe, $50. And I had already had 25 bucks in my wallet. And so now I had $75. And when I went out for my run, I go, well, how can I come up with the other 25 bucks? And I came back and realized during the run, I remembered that on a daily basis for years, I take my pocket change out and throw them in a cup on top of my desk and just, eventually go get some bills out. Realized I had 25 bucks in quarters there. And literally within less than 24 hours, there I had my $100 bill. I took all that money to the bank, got my $100 bill. I had manifested that $100 I think it was within 10 or 12 hours I had. And when next week I came back, the other two had also manifested in different ways $100 in their wallet. So that's a small example, but it is a good example.
Yeah, that's super fun. What's the difference between manifesting $100 versus like just going through the steps to put $100 bill into your wallet?
Well, by the steps, what do you mean the steps? Just like finding the change and stuff like that?
Yeah, or just like taking $100 bill out of your bank account.
Oh, well, I mean, to a certain extent, you are manifesting it into your wallet. In my case, I guess it was so much going beyond, and so I certainly had that money in my checking account. I could have done that. But in this case, I did put it out to the universe to have it sent to me. Mm-hmm. And I did. Yeah, sure. You can take that path if you want, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But that was an example where I truly did put it out to the universe and it was sent to me.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like it's such and I just wanted to get your take on it because there's like a totally different feeling of, it's like almost being surprised by how the universe delivers it to you versus like, okay, if I just make a list and then go through the steps, then I'll have the thing. Like that's, I think the 3D way, right? You can do it that way. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I'm just going to get my ducks in a row and then I'll have the thing. The other day I was, so we live in the city. It's kind of a small yard, but we want to have as much food production as we can. And I noticed that my neighbors, they're not using their backyard. So I said, hey, can we plant in your yard and we'll share the food with you? They said, yep. So they have a much sunnier yard as well. So they like pretty good conditions for growing. Anyway, I was like, okay, we're gonna get lots of tomatoes, but I didn't want to buy the tomato plants. That was my objective, was like either somebody's gonna give me the seeds or the plants, or like I'm not sure how it's gonna happen, but my intention was 8 tomato plants, but I'm not gonna buy them. So our other next door neighbor gave me 3. He's like, I have 6 and I'll give you 3. I was like, amazing. 3 down, 5 to go. And then we had spread compost out in one of our gardens. And all of a sudden, all these tiny little tomato plants were sprouting up from the compost. There must have been seeds in the compost. So all of a sudden I have this like little tomato farm where I can just, spread them out a bit more. And now I have more than enough tomatoes. And it was so cool because that very moment I was asking, like, where am I going to get these other 5 tomato plants? Boom, there they are sitting right in front of me. And I was just blown away.
Yeah, that is, I love that. That's a great example. You definitely put out the intention to the universe. Yeah. Another really famous example, and, this maybe not a lot of people heard of this, but they heard of Dr. Wayne Dyer. And I heard this from him years ago. I forget, it was just a TV interview or something. But he had a home in Maui where he lived, and he had a garage, and he went in there, and the light bulb above in the ceiling of the garage had broken off as he tried to unscrew it because it had burned out and he wanted to take it. Well, so here he had this light bulb with the base with a shard still there. So he had to get some pliers to go in and turn off the electricity and go in and he couldn't find pliers anywhere in his garage. And he was running around. I know I had some pliers. Where are they? And he finally decided to get in his car and go to the hardware store to go buy some pliers. And he said, as he was walking down his driveway, there was a brand new pair of pliers laying in his driveway. And he has no idea where it came from. And he just manifested pliers. So I think the important thing is when you put out your intentions to the universe, you can do it for small things like pliers or $100 bill or your biggest goals and dreams. It works for any of that.
I'd love to, I think probably a lot of people have the experience of maybe manifesting tomatoes or pliers or something, and they're like, oh, cool, I can do it. And then they try it again and it's like, doesn't work or doesn't work right away. And then they're like, what did I do wrong? Or what did I do differently? Could you speak to like just how to be more consistent, either like what you've observed in yourself or with your clients? Yeah, love to hear about that.
Well, and this is exactly why in 2014, being a seeker of trying to figure this stuff out, I had clients. I had just started as a life coach 2 years in, and many of my clients could manifest these things, but not consistently. And myself, the same thing was true with me, and I couldn't do it consistently. And I go, well, how can I become a consistent co-creator with the universe to manifest the things I want? So I finally realized, I wrote an ebook called The 3 Pillars, a simple 3-step process to manifest positive and permanent change in your life. And I realized that there are 3 pillars to our life: mental, physical, and spiritual. And if one of those pillars, and what's the purpose of a pillar? It holds up your house, your life in a solid form so it doesn't collapse. But if one of those pillars has a crack in it, then the whole foundation of your house, your life, is on shaky ground and could eventually just simply collapse down into dust. And I realized in order to keep those cracks from forming in the 3 main pillars of your life, you have to walk upright in the integrity of the universal, eternal, unchanging truth of love, unity, and oneness. And there is no inconsistency there. In the reality of all that is, there is no inconsistency. So if you apply these eternal principles to your life, all 3 pillars, mental, physical, and spiritual, will stand strong for the ages. I call it creating a rock solid personal foundation for your life. And one of the things that helped me to understand these cracks was I looked at some of the higher profile people in the world, like politicians and sports icons and movie stars, and we looked at them through the eyes of the media, and we think they have this perfect life and everything. And all of a sudden we see a news story. Well, this movie star was arrested for assault and sexual abuse and blah, blah, blah. And their entire life came crashing down into the dust. And I realized that those people were not marching in the integrity of those universal, unchanging, eternal truths of love, unity, and oneness. They were stuck in the 3D egoic world where everything is separation and me, 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 me. And consequently, those cracks in their pillars created and the whole house came tumbling down. So if you want to be a consistent co-creator, look deeply within yourself. Am I in alignment with these beautiful truths of the universe? And I have found personally that as I've aligned myself and fixed any cracks in my pillars, and sometimes you have to pay attention on a daily basis. Uh-oh, my thinking and my acting and my words weren't in alignment. I see a little crack there. I better patch that up. And by doing so, your house stands strong for the ages. And I've talked to other people, and as they do this, you can start to see more and more consistency in what you want to create in your life.
Can you give an example of a crack that you, for a long time, maybe weren't aware of, and then you became aware through, self-observation and how you fixed it?
So maybe in my mental pillar, as I became a spiritual student and a seeker, I realized that much of my thinking in my younger years was judgmental. And one of the universal truths is that which you give out comes back to you. And I realized that, when I first started being a runner, I'd be going down the street and I'd see somebody really obese running like a slug, and they're sweating, and I'd go, look at that fat person. And now what I understand is I see that same person running down the road. I go, thank you. I'm so grateful that you're out here doing something, and I'm putting that out to the universe. And so that is the thing. If one of your, just simply talking about your mental pillar, if you are in a constant state of judgment, and in our egoic world of separation that we project out there, if you can keep doing that, the world's just going to throw judgment back at you. And this comes in many ways, shapes, and forms. So that's a good example right there. I know I really patched up many cracks in my mental pillar right there.
Yeah, it's reminding me of I work with the shaman, and he says, like, you have to follow the codes of conduct, but he doesn't say what the codes of conduct are, but it's just implied, like, you will know whether you're following them or not.
The universe will let you know.
Yeah. I think we have this fantastic opportunity again, because you've interviewed so many folks and I've interviewed so many folks. Would love to hear, actually, let's start with some of the recent guests maybe that blew your mind or shared something with you that you didn't know or weren't aware of. I find, like, it gets harder and harder to surprise me because of all the wild things I've experienced. But yeah, I'm curious what from your side.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, because I just recorded my 116th episode yesterday. There's a lot
Nice.
there. Well, it's allowed me to connect with many spiritual icons, but I think that the one thing that I had not really explored before I got into my podcasting was there's way more out there to the universe than we realize. Everybody thinks, that there's just humans on Earth. And I have had many channels and mediums on my show. I've had galactic beings coming through, people like Othello, who's from Sirius B, come through Christina Hill, who is, she's actually channeled Othello on the stage at Carnegie Hall in New York with Michael Beckwith. So it allowed me to understand that there are other entities and beings out there, just simply because we can't see them in our spectrum of light, that do exist in other dimensions. And the vast majority of them are in alignment with us in wanting the human race to achieve ascension and raise ourselves out of this 3D chaotic, crazy world of lack, attack, and judgment. And yeah, that's really blown your mind. And so I had one, but the more I keep getting more and more of these people. And again, the technology of being on video conferencing or the internet has allowed us to connect with like we never have before. All I can say is the world is watched over and taken care of by beings and ascended masters and angelic beings that we literally had no clue of before. And it continues to blow my mind, and I love it.
Why are these beings aligned with the ascension of humanity? Why do they even care?
Well, you may have had guests like this too, but my understanding is Earth is a playground for us to be born into, to go through this process of enlightening, learning our lessons, and going back to the Creator, and eventually realizing that nothing is separate, and that, and I don't know. I think this may be beyond my comprehension. My understanding is much of the universe is depending on what happens here to the human race on Earth, and this is why they're so watching over us so closely. I wish I had a bigger understanding of it. I'm going to have to go back and watch some of my own shows, but vast majority of these beautiful beings have come through. My guests on my show speak only of those eternal, universal truths of love, oneness, and unity.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear your interpretation of why they are relying on us, because it does seem to be there is so much interest in this moment in time here on Earth. Like everyone's watching, and I've heard it expressed as like no species has gone as far into separation as we have. Like it has gone as dense as we have, and like lived to tell the tale essentially. And so it's like, how are we going to handle this? So, but I guess the question still remains, like, well, what does it matter? Like if we don't make it through, if we just blow ourselves up, then then they can just start over with another Earth-like planet, right?
Well, my understanding from speaking one-on-one with these beings, that's not true. I think our situation on Earth is a key to their existence. My understanding, again, and I'm just telling you what these beings have spoken of through these channels on my show, that many of us are born, we were star seeds. We came from other dimensions and races, and to born into this world, to go through this 3D world of separation. And when you think of it, you go, really, I came here for this? But it's a process. And it takes lifetimes and lifetimes to achieve that enlightenment. And as we well know, there's been only a couple individuals that have achieved total enlightenment, like Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad. So, I wish I had a better answer for you. I mean, I'm going through my own journey here too, and trying to figure out, but it has been very, very enlightening. I've spoken to the council of the Council of Light, which is a group of ascended masters that come through my own mentor, Christy Whitman. She now channels them. Othello, I've had Daniel the Octurian come through Tracy Mahan, who is a hypnotherapist and a channel. The Galila Collective, which comes through a young lady out of England. What is her name? I'm afraid of getting a name. On and on. I have to go back and check. And most of what these, again, I said this already, but most of what these beings are saying are in alignment with my guests who speak on a non-dualistic spirituality.
Do you have a favorite of these beings or groups that you personally resonate with the most?
I really, really like Othello, the Syrian, who comes through Christina Hill. She, my understanding is Othello is a 12th dimension ascended master who comes through. Othello, who is an American who lives in the Yucatan in Mexico. And when Othello comes through, her voice changes. And not all of the channeled beings, the channeler's voice changes when it comes through. Oh, one of the most famous I've spoken to was Lazarus through Jacques Purcell, who channeled Lazarus for 40 plus years and is now going into retirement. And I've had several thousand views of that interview with Jacques on YouTube. And Jacques is probably one of the more famous channelers in the world. Who's it? Lee. Oh, there's another really, really famous
Lee
one.
Harris?
Nah, no, I'm blanking on this one too. But there's so many people, and the world is more ready to accept this than ever before. I mean, if it was a couple, 5, 7 centuries ago, they would all been burned at the stake as witches.
Yeah.
Now the world's.
Um, have you tried channeling?
I've been told that everybody has the ability to do it. Sometimes in my meditation, I feel a little like nudge, but it hasn't happened. One of my favorites too. I had the Pittsburgh medium Carol Collins on about a year and a half ago. I actually went and spent an entire retreat weekend with her and about 10 other people in St. Augustine, Florida, and that was interesting. It was an entire weekend of us in an Airbnb near the beach in St. Augustine. And Carol she channels Yeshua, Seth, and a few other ascended masters and teachers. And she was on the entire weekend. I'd say, "Hey, Carol, what about?" And she goes, "No, you're not talking. This is Yeshua you're speaking to." So to spend an entire weekend with
Wow.
channeled beings was it. And honestly, it was probably one of the greatest experiences of my life. I actually learned quite a bit that weekend.
Wow. I'm so curious about her process to stay in that state for so long.
Her willingness, she's committed totally to being a channel for their teachings and their voices. Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting. I was walking down the street with Carol, and I did that. I said, "So, Carol, where do you think our cars are right now? We can't remember where we're parked." No, this is Yeshua. The cars are over there. Okay, thank you, Yeshua.
You mentioned star seeds. Do you know do you have a star seed origin story?
Not from personally, no. I have no clue on that. I really don't, but many of my guests have spoken about it, and I don't know if I have enough knowledge to go there. But evidently, a lot of beings from other dimensions and galaxies have decided to come here to experience this 3D world of in a body.
Well, I saw just recently the term star seeds has gone mainstream. It's starting to hit the, corporate media as a term that people are aware of. So that's, um, the article that I saw was like probably written from a skeptical person who was like, people think they're star seeds. Um, but the fact that they're, having a conversation about it means that it's sort of in the in the field, so to speak.
I think for you and I, because of the people we've spoken to one on one and learned from, and the things we've done, we are open to this understanding that the possibility and the reality of it is here. Absolutely. I mean, this whole topic is really, really mind blowing still in this day and age here in the year 2023. But like I keep saying, the whole world is now more than ever open to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and it's blossoming.
Yeah, it's cool to be a part of. And maybe we'll just give a quick shout out to our podcast network, because we originally we connected through podcasting, and now we're officially colleagues. But we've got this whole group of podcasters, the Ethereal Podcast Network. There's 11 shows now, I think.
Yeah, some pretty cool shows and people in there, and what a blessing for you and I and in the world that we've been able to connect with like-minded people and shows, and it's real. I love it.
Yeah, so we'll see how that project takes off, and what comes of it. But hoping we can do something kind of like what Gaia does with more
Mhm.
video content, and just bringing in. I really like. I would love to, and now that I'm just saying this out loud, I would love to just get together with some of these guests in person, because it really is like when you can hang out with really incredible people, you just kind of can't help but uh, pick up on their awesomeness. Um,
Well,
maybe,
and I've done that. I mean, I've hung out with one of the world's greatest teachers of A Course in Miracles, Gary Renard. My most popular episode of my 116, Gary, I've been to his workshops. I had dinner with him and his wife and gotten to know them one on one. I feel like they're my friends. Carol Collins, the Pittsburgh medium, I've hung out an entire weekend with her. And yeah, gee, and a number of other people I've had the opportunity to meet. You spent, I believe, a whole weekend with one of my guests, the vocal teacher,
with Marin.
Marin. Yeah, Marin Azoff. And she's also one of my very popular episodes too. She's amazing. And so you've gotten to hang out with her too.
Yeah, it's and she is one of those people. She's like probably one of the most high frequency people that I've spent time with, and it like with the tuning fork thing, like you can't
Mm,
help but match the high frequency. Like nothing would bring her frequency down, right? She could be surrounded by a bunch of people at all different frequencies, right? And they would sort of be forced to raise to her level. And I think, reading through um Yogananda's book, The Autobiography of Yogi,
oh, yeah.
basically all those gurus and saints in India, they just always have people sitting around them. And I think what's happening is they're just there, like, yeah, they're learned, like the person's talking and they're like, okay, cool, thank you, I'm learning as you're speaking. But what they're really doing is just harmonizing with that person's state of being. I think like that's where the real benefit is.
And that takes me back to talking about, like, in my case, my close personal friends, nobody is into what I'm doing. And you don't want to start resonating. And I mean, you can do casual chatting and talking and being friends and loving them, but you don't want to have your energy pulled down. I think one of my favorite quotes comes from Ram Dass, the 20th, 21st century North American guru. He said, if you think you're enlightened, just go spend a week with your family. So, and yeah, that's definitely true. I actually just did that, visited a family for a week, and I just went in a whole state of forgiveness and love, and it really panned out well.
Yeah, luckily I've always had like a fantastic, my folks and I have always gotten along really well, so it's actually way easier. Doesn't have as many lessons for me because it's always been easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's tell people where they can find you online and connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. My main website is karlgruberlifecoach.com. Karl is spelled with a K, K-R-R-L, Gruber, Gruber. I think you can see it on the screen there on the bottom right. And lifecoach.com. I have a Facebook page. I'm on Instagram. Just like everybody, you have to be on social media when you're in this type of business. And they can also find my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, A Beautiful Symbiotic Relationship, on Amazon. That was my full-length book follow-up to my Three Pillars ebook. I expanded in a full-length version on it. And actually, I'm doing a workshop on that in my hometown here in a couple weeks. Yeah, so go on Amazon, look up my books. I have a couple other ones. Wrote a couple books on running. And my Law of Attraction Life Coach page. Yeah, karlgruberlifecoach.com. Oh, and my Power of Eight Healing Group. If you want to join, just look up Power of Eight Healing Group.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think anybody can pop in there and just do it and see what it's like, and it's that's pretty cool to experience.
It is a great experience.
How much can you know if you never healed anybody? Might as well try it, right?
Yeah, and like we said, if you don't see the person who is the focus of healing, you will be healed in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, perfect. Karl, great hanging out with you. Good to see you.
Oh yeah, you're always, as your audience know, I love to call you this. You are a metaphysical renaissance man. I love everything you do. Thank you for shining your light on the world.
Thanks, Karl.